Hi guys, my name is Niv Ashkenazi and this is I for Technique. In my first video on this channel, we looked at 5 different techniques in slow motion, and today we're going to look at 3 more. We're going to look at Ricochet, Chords, and Staccato in slow motion. I picked these 3 techniques because they are quite different from one another, but they have some similarities, and I wanted to get to look at it in slow motion. Some of these are very common techniques, and in the case of staccato, we don't even think about it when we have it in our repertoire. I actually had to dig a little bit to find a piece of music where I could really demonstrate just staccato. And some of this is more extended techniques, like with the ricochet, which is more advanced. I wanted to take the opportunity using the slow motion to show you guys what I look for when I look at videos and in checking my playing to make sure that my technique is as efficient as possible. I picked 3 short excerpts to highlight these 3 techniques. And the reason they're this short is because when we use a slow motion camera, it is actually going to expand the length of the clip. So a 10-second clip will end up being many minutes long. Of course, I'm not going to make you watch all of that in slow motion. I just picked small sections of the slow motion that are most intriguing and most helpful for us to look at today. So let's begin with some ricochet. When we think of Ricochet, a lot of the time we think of Mendelssohn Concerto's Cadenza or Paganini Caprice Number 1, but that's more of a bariolage Ricochet. And today I actually wanted to cover Ricochet on 1 string, and so that's why I chose Bazzini. Before we jump into the slow motion, let's talk really quickly about what we want to be looking for when we're looking at Ricochet. We want to be looking at our right hand and making sure that our fingers are really still and that everything looks exactly like it would for détaché, with just a small lift right before to drop the bow to allow the bow to bounce by itself. So here we're going to be looking at ricochet, and we're going to be able to see the whole arm from this angle. So we can see that the bow stroke itself, when it comes to ricochet, looks exactly the same as a normal détaché or any other normal technique. There's just a little bit of throwing the bow down onto the string, but the finger motion, the wrist motion, and the arm motion are basically the same as if we were bowing along the string, just back and forth. The really important thing to see is that the fingers are very still. We don't want to see pulsing in the fingers. That pulsing means that we're adding energy to the ricochet and disrupting the ricochet and not just letting the bow itself bounce by itself. And so luckily here we see that the fingers are completely still, which is exactly what we want. We just want the energy to come from gravity and the stick of the bow. In this clip, we're going to actually see Ricochet from another angle. So this is a much closer up angle, and we're closing in on the bow and the bow hairs on the string. So what I found particularly interesting watching this is to see how long the bow is actually on the string before it bounces back up. Because ricochet really feels as though the bow is just coming right off the string and bouncing right off it, but really it's staying on the string for quite a little while before bouncing off. As expected, what we see is that when we do the ricochet, the first note gets the most bow and the most energy, the most height, and then as the bow keeps bouncing, it gets to be smaller and smaller bounces and to use less and less bow. So that was basically expected. And as violinists, of course, we compensate for that. But it was cool to actually see that here. I mean, the last bounce sometimes looks like it barely, if even, actually does come off the string. There's just parts of it that come off the string, but not always all of it. So it's kind of cool to see that. It almost looks like sautiller if it's done with a turned bow. So it's just interesting to get to see this up close. Next, we're going to look at some broken chords. What's important to look at in this clip is the arm level, because we need to have the arm level changing for these chords. And I also found it interesting to look at the difference of the hand when we're going on an up bow versus a down bow. Just as a little bit of a note, this is solo Bach, so there's some chords that I'm rolling and some chords that I'm doing as chords of two and two, but I was avoiding doing any triple stops. So that could be for a different video, but these are all broken chords of some sort. So we're going to look now at chords, and we have a close-up view, which is going to let us look at the right hand. And here we're going to start with an up bow chord, and we're going to see a nice scoop that happens as I change from string to string. And then the downward chord is also going to have a bit of a scoop. We can also see the strings vibrate as we end up on each string. Since it's Bach, some of these are more rolled and some of these are more two and two, like double stops. This is what this angle gets to show us, which is the bow up close. So here we're going to see some more chords, and we can see the same motions as before, but we're going to zoom out here slowly so that we can actually see what the motion looks like with the entire arm. So we see every up bow, there's a bit of a scooping motion, and every down bow, our elbow is kind of what engages to get us over the different strings. So here we go. We can see the elbow over here, and on the down bow, the elbow drops a bit, and the whole arm drops in order to reach the higher two notes. And then on the up bows, it's basically that same elbow to fingers motion where we go from below and scoop inwards so that the elbow goes down and the hand comes in for a nice chord change. Here's another down bow that we can see with the full bow stroke. So as we can see, it's just smooth bows with string changes that are on two strings at the same time and being rolled. The elbow motion functions exactly the same as it would on any other string change. Staccato is all over our repertoire, and I honestly had a hard time thinking of a passage to show it off. And then my wife started singing this passage, which is from Lalo Symphony Espanol. But the thing is, it's not even from the solo violin part, like the soloist part. So I had to go and find some orchestra music for this. Just a quick note for those of you who are looking super carefully at what bowing I'm using for this section. Yes, I know it's probably better to go down, down at the very beginning on those first two notes, but for the sake of showing off staccato, I actually changed the bowing to down, up. That way we had a little bit more staccato to look at. Staccato can be done in two different ways. You can end the staccato by digging the bow into the string, or you can end by lifting the bow out of the string. I have a strong, strong preference to lifting the bow out of the string because when we dig it into the string, we get a bit of a crunch, and that's usually more of the studenty way when we first start to learn how to do staccato. So we actually get to see some interesting things in the slow motion because of the way I'm ending the notes, as well as looking at how specifically a staccato looks when we start a bow stroke. So here we can see staccato, and we can see that I'm prepping before my bow even touches the string. And once the bow touches the string, the hand's going to move before the bow moves, and that's what's giving it the energy. Now, I like to do my staccato so that at the end I release all pressure. So you're going to see the bow bouncing a little bit, the stick of the bow. But the minute I'm ready to do an up bow, I dig in, start the motion again, and that's how we get another staccato. Here we're going to get to see staccato with a full bow and then at the tip. So we see that the hand is prepped, pressure, and then the fingers actually pull the bow and the bow starts to move. And we're going to end up going all the way to the very tip. And what we'll see at the very tip is that there's a lot of tension that needs to be put on the bow to get it to really grab. You'll see the pressure from the pointer finger and from the wrist. And the wrist is going to stay in that downward position, which is normal for the tip. So here we're almost done with that down bow, and we're going to start the up bow. So we'll see a little bit of a bow change, and here comes the energy into the string with the pointer finger, and the wrist follows. And now this down bow, the wrist is still down, and we're going to press in a lot and use a lot of pronation to get that staccato. And we release. We definitely release the tension after each and every bow stroke so that we don't get scratch at the end of a bow stroke. So we've seen staccato at the frog in the lower half, we've seen staccato at the tip in the upper half, and here are more three-quarter bow staccatos on a down bow and an up bow. And we can see the same things. Really, there's a lot of pronation, there's a lot of pressure with the first finger, and then afterwards there's a release at the very end. Basically, the motion starts in the hand first before the bow is even moved, and that motion is there to create the pressure that needs to be there before the bow is actually moved. I hope you found this video useful. I'll be doing some other videos like this where we take a few techniques and show them in slow motion. Please let me know if there are any techniques that you would like to see, and I look forward to seeing you next time.